The night is dark. I gaze up at my computer screen and ponder that the movie Sin City is already 20 years old. My world starts spinning. I go into the bathroom mirror. I look at my reflection. Has it really been 20 years? 2 decades since Robert Rodriguez's groundbreaking comic adaptation? It doesn't feel real, Dragon, does it?
No.
It just makes me want to narrate grimly into the night about the passage of time.
Yeah.
Right, Dragon. I just felt like this didn't warrant a fellow armchair Imagineer, so I kind of got creative with it. I'm sorry. I didn't. All right. So yes, folks, this is indeed the Sin City 20th anniversary retrospective podcast. And Dragon, as you know, I honestly feel like for all of these anniversary podcasts that we've been doing, this might be the one where it's hit me the hardest of like, oh my God, I cannot believe this movie is 20 years old. I feel like this movie was very much Dragon. Like, as you know, Jason X was the first R-rated movie that I saw in theaters. I would like to think that this is the first, like, and up until this point, I think I had seen stuff like the 40-Year-Old Virgin, you know, the year before. Like, I'd been taken to R-rated comedies a couple times. I'm sure probably at least one or two more R-rated horror movies. This is really the first R-rated movie in theaters that came out like when I was coming of age. You know, I was like 14, 15, going on 15 when this movie came out. That just stuck with me. That just stuck with me in a really visceral kind of way. Dragon, I rewatched the crap out of this movie. I just remember thinking when this came out that, like, wow, like this is like almost kind of like the dawn of like a new era of how movies can get made, you know, with the stylization and everything. And I got to tell you, Dragon, it's been a long time, like, because I didn't even really think it was necessary for me to rewatch this. And honestly, I was kind of right, because I rewatched it. It's like, yeah, that, like, everything, I maintain pretty much everything. Like, I've seen this movie. This is one of those movies I can pretty much recite in my head, like, verbatim. So, but the one thing that I do kind of value in rewatching it, Dragon, is I'm just really impressed by how much this holds up on a visual level, which the visuals are, of course, the film's biggest asset. I will say some of the writing is, you know, I think for the most part, the writing in this movie is dated only in the sense that, you know, like film noir tropes in general are dated. But I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit too much edgelord in here. But the actual visuals of this thing, man, I think they just pop. I mean, I honestly think this movie is still a little bit ahead of its time. I wish that movies today used visuals in this kind of way. It's kind of funny, Drake, because I feel like between this, we had this, and then we had 300 the year afterwards. And then a couple years after that, we had the Wachowskis' Speed Racer movie. And I feel like with Speed Racer, that has definitely been reevaluated as kind of like a movie that's a little ahead of its time. I just think like using the CGI, but using it in a way that it's actually stylized. Like, because I feel like the problem with CGI now, and I'm sure we'll get into it with this discussion, is that I feel like they use it to make things look realistic, and in the realism, things just kind of, we get that muddy sort of CGI look that, like, you know, the live action Disney remakes are kind of known for. So I just think like using it in a way that's almost like a palette, as this movie does, is just it really still to this day looks quite impressive and quite eye-popping. Yeah, okay, so Dragon, I'm sorry, that was quite a long-winded first impressions on me. What say you, my friend?
So, yeah, Sin City, iconic Frank Miller story. I would attest this was very much kind of like a turning point for him in a big way. So, you know, as great as Dark Knight Returns is, and I want to tell you, obviously, that is the granddaddy of the iconic, like shelf books that there are out there. But yeah, remember this Sin City not based on anything. I mean, it's not like a pre-existing, like
I would
icon,
say
like a
if
bat.
anything, it's based on like hard-boiled film noir detective stuff in the same way that like Raiders of the Lost Ark is based on pulp adventure serials.
Well, yeah, Tika, that's what I'm saying. It's based on archetypes, not
Right,
actual like
right, yeah.
pre-existing characters. So that's what I'm saying. This is like a ground-up original Frank Miller creation that's a love letter to the themes that shaped Batman and Daredevil for years with under Frank Miller's pen. So it's kind of like a tribute, kind of paying the piper for giving him the inspiration for all the stuff he infused in that stemmed from this genre. It's basically kind of a love letter to the genre. So there's a tight wire is a tightrope walk between quality storytelling and right before Frank Miller fully dons the crazy hat. That's essentially what. So that's essentially what Sin City is. I
There
would,
is some like crazy Frank Miller in here, but you're right. There's enough in here that's like sensible but you're right. It's really right on that edge, Dragon. It's right on that edge.
and that's what I'm getting at, Tiki. Is that tightrope essentially? Now, I want to be clear. Now he had done, Dark Knight Strikes Again before this. That's in like 2001. So I'm
Mhm,
saying he was already drifting to okay. But that was, the idea is 9/11 really shook him because he was in New York when it happened. So that's
mhm.
why Dark Knight Strikes Again kind of happens the way it does. But the point being, this walks that line because it's taking the stuff that, again, he truly loved and, again, did kind of infuse itself into his work. And again, it's like it's in a safe space essentially. It's in like just the right context where all the kind of the crazy hat era of Frank Miller, that goes off the reservation, could be packed into this venue, this story, this thing. It's just kind of divided from everything else. It doesn't like encroach upon like a Batman or like man, Batman would never do things like this, or or this. It's just like just the right amount of like okay, in a hard boiled detective sense, this is what would happen, and we're not taking it and like imposing it on the spirit, in which we're basically taking Frank Miller's sensibilities and slapping it on the spirit. We're not doing that here. Again,
Right,
it's
right, right.
purely it's like it's the perfect kind of canvas for him to paint on. He's painting in black, white, red, and a dash of yellow. So it's this causal relationship between detective and noir to film and comics. Like that's the causal relationship. It's the noir detective stuff and kind of the film and comic language of it. Also, the this film is a testament to that relationship, to what that comic was, where it was the combination of like the old movies and the old kind of the beginnings of detective comics and what comics used to be as a medium, along with just the relationship of like how we always think of like the old hard boiled detective stuff. So it's kind of it's the perfect marriage of those two things in kind of the culture.
Mhm.
And frankly, here's the thing. Frankly, I've always liked the movie more than the book. I can't, for some reason, I want to be clear. The writing is there for the book. It's just Frank Miller's art style, I feel, from a design standpoint, works. But in the Sin City comic, and this is not a detriment to the book. It's the comic being in black and white the way that it is not the issue. It's the issue that it's kind of that mixed with Frank Miller's style and the fact that after a while the male characters kind of look like the same guy after a while. Now,
I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I think a big strength of this movie is just like the way that the segments are ordered and kind of crisscross
yeah,
into each other at certain points.
yeah. So, like I said, like I that's just a hang up that I have. So personally, I've always like I people it's been lauded over. Oh my god, you haven't read the Sin City comic, and I did. Don't get me wrong, it is translated here. That story is what we're adapting here. And it's great. It's just I don't find it as digestible as Frank Miller's other stuff. That said, though, I prefer the movie basically because I think the movie just kind of stands out. Our colors pop. We got just aesthetically, we have a lot going on there. And again, you have the atmosphere and you have things that you can't get straight from the comic in the movie because again we're celebrating kind of the inspiration that went into the comic on screen. Again, it's like the snake eating its own tail. It's the films that inspired Frank Miller, which brought us the comic. It's this.
Oh God.
It's all. It's I don't know. It's a twist. It's a tangled web, and I just love it. It's a Spider-Man noir of a web, one could say. So again, it's just this great way to kind of embody that and really display that relationship in a stylized, stylized way. That again, I just think we perfectly adapted this comic. And it's one of the few and far between times we can it's like Emmer, since it was one of the unadaptable comics, like Watchmen, that people, oh, you'll never be able to do that, and it's one of the few and far between that. Oh my God, we got to do comic book movies like this, in which we can accomplish the impossible. We can make it as slavishly faithful to the original, and not be afraid of it. And again, with the 20 years factored in here, 20 years ago, this was not done. This would be impossible to make then, as it would be now. But especially then, like selling anyone on being able to do this, well, Robert Rodriguez, that would not happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Let's see. You mentioned Watchmen, and I think it's really interesting because Watchmen, I almost kind of feel was like, and I'm sure we've talked about this before when we've talked about HBO Watchmen and stuff, but it's almost like too slavishly dedicated to just adapting beat by beat everything in the graphic novel. And then, like, we can argue the semantics of changing the Dr. Manhattan twist. I think it does work for the semantics of that movie story, but at the same time, I really do like how the HBO Watchmen included the squid stuff, and it's cool to see the squid stuff adapted. Regardless, I think what makes Sin City work as a movie, like I said, is just the fact that the comics really, they weren't even, I mean, they were more kind of like they were a series of graphic novels for sure. Like you have something like A Dame to Kill For, which is more of a a full-fledged graphic novel, but really Sin City was kind of more or less a collection of novellas. It was almost like short stories. So I think just having this canvas to play in, that was really the driving force. It wasn't like you weren't really adapting one thing, but at the same time, the things you were adapting, you were going kind of like all in on the slavish, like panel per panel detail. So I'm sure we'll break that all down when we get into covering everything. So I imagine there's some interesting backstory here, Dragon.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, hold on one second. Let me get to the comments here. Yeah. Oh my God. Little Blue says 2005 was an interesting year for Rodriguez between this and Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Yeah. Both iconic movies in their own right.
He did pull the Spielberg thing a lot, where like in 03, right, he's doing like Spy Kids 3 and Once Upon a Time Mexico. So
Okay. Teddy asks, "What did you think of the sequel, Dragon?" Believe it or not, I never actually saw Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. Did you?
I did.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? I just heard not so good things about it, and I did not want to tarnish my memory of the original.
I mean, yeah, no, it's the thing where, given how we jump around here, the whole, essentially, The Dame to Kill For is a prequel. It's more of a prequel than it is a sequel. I forget if there's technically some sequel work in there. I want to say the majority, if not all of them, were stories that were set pre the movie, given how, basically most of our characters don't really see the end of this movie.
Right.
But yeah, it's, I mean, I respect that we had Rodriguez and
I remember that movie was in development hell for years.
It was, and that's what I'm saying. Right after they finished this movie, it was like an active development in terms of these guys were indeed working on the movie, but there was like a lot of stop and start that just happened with it, and I think it kind of showed in the end result. Let me put it this way: the best way to sum up it is that the majority of it felt good and in tune with the book, but like nothing ever captured the lightning in a bottle. That was, didn't feel like a classic like the original did. And the problem was the main segment, the Dame to Kill For chapter, was the least interesting of the bunch. So that kind of hurts.
That would be a problem.
As I'm saying, literally your namesake segment is like, well, it kind of fell short.
Yeah.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt was really good at it, though.
He feels like he would be really good just in this world in general. He feels like he would fit.
Yeah, so he was. I forget if he was the standout or not. I think he was, but basically, if memory serves, we had that, and I believe Marv's story was kind of like the thing we allude to in this movie. So that was really cool to see.
Right, yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah, background, Dragon. Go ahead.
Okay, so the Sin City comic was released through Dark Horse. guys that bring up the company that brought us the Mask and the Mask and Hellboy.
Mm-hmm.
This is like through 91 to 2000. We have, I think it's like roughly 7 volumes of the 7 volumes or chapters of the books that comprise Sin City. And basically, it's Frank Miller's love letter to noir and the influences that, basically it was like a fun, self-indulgent tribute to the stuff that he loved that, again, influenced him, but also years later would completely, like fabricate and create the crazy hat that he would put on. But, it's where it all stemmed from. So, of course, folks are referring to the evil hat that Frank Miller puts on that kind of makes him make questionable story decisions, but we're not going to dwell on that.
Is Frank Miller basically like the bizarro version of Dave Filoni?
Well, I mean, he was like the original like concept for like that Dave Filoni. So I don't know if Bizarro counts, but I guess basically he's the Dave Filoni's more of the friendly version of the Frank Miller.
Right.
It's like the fan. Honestly, it looks more like Robert Rodriguez's hat. So basically, he stole Robert Rodriguez's filmmaking hat.
There we go.
Anyway, silly headcanon aside, or hat cannon aside. So around 2003, Robert Rodriguez, he finishes Spy Kids 3, which at that time he thinks he's kind of out of the woods with Spy Kids. And, he's done Once Upon a Time Mexico, and he's looking for a challenge. And he's been kind of going to comic shops, and he's been picking up Sin City books, and he's just been captivated and swept up in it. And he's always wanted to do kind of a noir detective story, which you kind of see in Spy Kids 3. The opening of Spy Kids 3 is kind of like a light kid version of, a noir detective story with Junie.
That's true. Sure. I mean, I definitely Spy Kids 3, but I think all the Spy Kids movies have like some film noir flavor to them.
Well, no, for sure, but I'm just saying by that one he literally was a PI and they did like a whole noir opening, so detective opening. So you can kind of see that he's been wanting to do that, but the problem is he wanted an original avenue because otherwise he'd just be remaking like Maltese Falcon or he'd be remaking something, he'd be remaking a classic. He didn't just want to do that. So the books finally kind of gave him away, and I'm like, okay, here's like a really original noir thing that's in celebration of all the stuff that I love. It's got a fresh take on it. It's a comic book movie. There's a lot going here. So the goal was to not adapt the comic, but to adapt the medium to the comic. Because again, this was the running gag between the two, between Miller and Rodriguez, this was an anti-movie, and it was like very much in the Watchmen thing of like, almost deliberately made to be impossible to adapt.
Right.
So that was the challenge that Rodriguez really wanted to take on here. So again, it was basically adapting the medium to a comic. So again, he's really laying the groundwork for the stuff that we would see years later and how you adapt, book to screen. So he seeks out Frank Miller. He will not do this thing without his goal is to make like Frank Miller's Sin City, not Robert Rodriguez like adapting a book that he read once. Probably read it more than once, but you take my point. So he seeks out Frank Miller to sell him on the project, and he basically crafts this animatic that's the opening credits and just kind of like some animatic layouts of what he wanted to do. And he takes him to a bar because Frank Miller loves bars. He loves going to bars. And he brings a laptop with him. He shows him the animatic, and he says like Bruce Willis as Detective Hartigan. And he's like, okay. He basically, it took him a while, but eventually he got Frank Miller to join him, and Frank Miller was kind of sold enough. And then basically he made a deal with him. He's like, okay, look, let's do a test. Okay, let's do a short film of basically the opening of the movie. Let's do the customer is always right. Let's do a short film of that. If you don't like it, you can keep the film because basically he has to sell him the rights and permission because again, it's he outright owns Sin City. So give me the rights and we'll make the movie. If you don't like it, if you're not comfortable with it, you'll be on set, you'll give the okays. We're going to translate exactly from the book. And if you don't like it, just keep it as a short film and you can show it to people at parties, do whatever you want with it. So Frank Miller was there and it was magic. It was kismet. He was, again, Frank was a first-time director. He's a comic book writer, never directed a day in his life. So he very much co-directed this film and he wrote it because essentially they didn't do a screenplay, Tiki. They basically, if you notice the movie, the credit is based on Frank Miller's Sin City. That is like the screenplay credit, which is really unique. Like there is no it's literally the book.
That's really interesting. I never actually noticed that before.
I mean, I assume they gave
it is basically word for word for the comic, so yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, I didn't think about that.
Especially when they have the writer who was like the co-director, he's there. So essentially, anything he would punch up would be okay. So I mean, they probably gave the actors sides and stuff, but for all intents and purposes, they basically translated the book into a script, and that was about the screenplay. So anyway, so Frank Miller, again he didn't trust Hollywood. So Rodriguez, that was the big thing. So he
He is even talking to Alan Moore.
no probably.
I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't trust Hollywood either, but
So Rodriguez, he wanted him to co-direct. He wanted to make sure his vision is realized. So that went along with Frank Miller. Frank Miller actually had a lot of pathos going on here, even though he's a big, he's a tough New Yorker. I don't think he'd let anyone know this, but I think he was, I think he was really charmed by just the effort. Like Rodriguez bent over backwards to make this like as faithful as possible to the comic. He even like built the bar, the way Rodriguez works. He kind of works in kind of the late stage. George Lucas Star Wars prequels style, which uses like the green screens. Only there's a lot more personability with the green screens. As in, the actors aren't just talking to tennis balls. Like, all the actors
right.
are on. Essentially, they're on set, but they have all the green screen. But then but he's not just doing that just for like, look at all the effects we can throw at the screen. He does.
Well,
the
it's
green.
almost kind of like how Universal's doing their dark rides now, where you have like the practical sets in the foreground, and then you have the green screen stuff to kind of fill everything out, right?
So that's the thing. So basically, he's using like like the tradition with Rodriguez is he has like the 15-minute film school method in which he'll show you the behind the scenes. Basically it's very much like you can do this at home, kids, kind of a thing where with the green screen and treadmills and just really creative filmmaking here and there. That's how he kind of does. And the reason he used all the green screen, did his usual stuff here, is to do it in layers. So that's why it pops like a comic, because they're like on plates and they're in front of stuff. So it's not in black and white. I'm sure it really helps as well. Like little things too, like the rain trick, for example. We have classic Frank Miller rain, which I don't think you can really replicate in real life.
Sure,
Where you basically have like the giant like sideways blobs of rain, and you'll notice the characters are not soaking wet in each shot, and that's the trick. They're being misted down. That's like the otherworldly like stylistic thing. All these little tricks of the trade that Rodriguez put into the filmmaking. So it's not just the CG fest. Like he's thinking about these things.
The movie very much is a CG fest, but it's immersive though. I mean,
yeah.
Like I said, it's like when you look at like something like I'm just gonna fucking throw it right under the bus, Dragon. The live action Snow White that we just got. I haven't actually seen it, but my God, the CGI on those fucking dwarves looks utterly terrifying. just visually, completely and utterly unappealing on every level. And it's like this movie just kind of like does it so. I don't know. There's just something like so raw about it. Just like the fact that it is just right off the screen. I really feel like we could be doing so much better, so much more creative than we have been with the use of digital effects recently.
And that's the thing. Like, you go back to '05 here again. Technically, there is not a frame of this film that doesn't have at least a little bit of CG
Oh yeah,
going on, and
definitely.
yet again, it's very seamless though, or at least it's so stylized that it's seamless.
Well, like I said, I would equate it to Speed Racer. Is that fair? I mean, obviously different styles, but I think with this and with Speed Racer, like what makes both those movies really stand the test of time is the fact that like in no scene or section is the movie really trying to exist in any reality other than its own. It completely creates its own world visually.
Sure. So with that too, all the inner monologues, they're recorded on a very old microphone, again to give you the old hard boiled vibe. So like these are little touches that are really going a long way in showing how faithful he's being to the original, and also kind of impressing Frank Miller along the way. Each segment has like a different effects house, and yet again, they kind of add to like these feel like very unique chapters of the book, but they're still kind of serving the overall vision. All the actors were in love with the source material. Like that's what I'm saying. So rarely on a production did you have all the actors saying like, "No, I want to look more like the comic." Like
Right.
seriously, like Benicio del Toro, his character, if you'll notice, he has like makeup appliances to his face. Technically, he originally wasn't supposed to have those, but he's asking like Nicotero, like the K&B effects guys, like, hey, can you make my nose like more like how can I look more like the character? Well, we're gonna add this prosthetic to your nose to give you more like the wider thing. There's okay, yes, do it, man.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm saying. Like that never happens on a production,
Yeah, for sure.
So Quentin Tarantino, he was a guest director, basically. So it's kind of, it was almost on a dare. Essentially, Rodriguez was like flouting the whole like, hey, look at how cool my green screen kind of like the digital filmmaking stuff is. The Tarantino, who's
Tarantino's such a
very
purist that yeah, I can never see him making a movie like this like all the way, but I do appreciate that he did challenge himself in it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So he did like one scene in the movie just as like a little guest directing
He
spot to
did
basically get.
the talking head scene, right? The Jackie Boy scene.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That
Okay.
that's that that's him, and that's essential. That was his kind of test for the media, and just kind of like getting the feel for like probably the first, and maybe the only time he's ever like fully shot like digital or shot like at the
Because
very least.
remember, this man is like obsessed with film in
Yeah.
exactly the same kind of way that Christopher Nolan is.
So this is very much kind of like almost like the drunk party challenge that we kind of talked
Right,
about.
right.
It's like, oh, like they were like arguing, but well, argue like in a friendly way, just like, oh, come on, Robert, and they're like he's visiting the set on one production. He's like, I dare, come on, Quinn, you're gonna love it. Let me show you how it works. Oh, all right.
Oh God.
I want to wear the hat though. Okay, fine, put on the hat. Anyway, so ultimately, there was a really moving moment on the production for Frank Miller, where at the very end, you know, the DGA refused to credit Frank Miller. The Directors Guild of America refused to credit Frank Miller, who would be a first-time director. Which I think the rule was, if you're a first-time director, you can't credit more than one person if one of them is like a first-time director. Like for example, I think technically you might be able to do like Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, even though he did one scene, but you can't have Frank Miller on there. So Rodriguez said, "Look, I will go to bat for you. I will, if it only allows us to put one name on the movie, I want it to be your name." Like he would
Oh, that's
let him
nice.
like, which is really nice of him. And ultimately, again, just like what he did was he just they honestly they kept fighting him on it. Like again, he's a first time director. He basically kept arguing, no, he is a director. Look at these books. He's directed visually these comics. Look at this. He's not his first time directing. I just gave him a camera.
This is really the first time that we've seen a whole movie get adapted, like basically like panel for
Yeah,
panel. And we don't really see it that often. Like we saw it kind of with Watchmen, but
yeah,
really, I can't really think of a lot of other examples.
yeah. Exactly. It's very rare.
Uh huh.
So, point being, Rodriguez he left the DGA, and that's why Frank Miller's name is on this movie. That's why he got the co-directing credit. Otherwise, that would not be possible. So, Robert Rodriguez he died on that hill. He says, I'm going to leave the DGA, and we're going to release this through us,
Nice.
which was nice. And there's one last thing I should mention. So, there is another cut of this movie. There is the
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to get into that because I was very into the different cuts of this movie.
Yeah, so essentially, so there's the theatrical cut, and there is I forget if we just call it the unrated cut or not. I guess technically it's unrated, but unrated is probably the poor word for it. The point being, there is the alternate cut in which it's four shorts. It's like it's cut up. You have like the opening title. You have like a little opening title that has the name of the chapter and credits for each section. It's basically like four short films, and there's a little bit of extra material in like three out of the four of these. Now, I don't care for it. That's not to say it's
I mean, I
bad.
already kind of addressed the fact that, like, I think what makes this movie work as well as it does, beyond just being a panel for panel adaptation, is moving back and forth between the stories so seamlessly. It's like we're mostly going from story to story, but I do like the fact that, the Bruce Willis bit is basically bookends the story. And I like the fact that Marv kind of exists within all three of the stories. There's just little storytelling beats in here that you just don't get in that version, I think.
Well, agreed. Now, so the main difference is that it's kind of like cut up as if you were to just basically read the volumes of the book. So
Right.
that's basically what the extended version of the movie is, which is interesting. But again, they didn't really.
But it's a
I
movie, though. Like that's the point, is that you're not just reading the graphic
Here's
novel.
why I can easily say I prefer the theatrical to the extended cut. Very easy, very easy. The way in which we cut up the customer's always right story, because the way they did that is like you have that and you have the very tail end little coda, like the full circle wraparound for
Mhm.
the movie, which doesn't full adaptation because we just cut. Okay, there's the salesman, and then oh look, just another little adventure salesman. It's like 5 minutes old. It's like it's like 2 4 minute scenes or something. Like it's barely 5 minutes. Like that. That doesn't feel really
No,
fulfilling.
exactly. The customer is always right is such a great, like, I mean, it's kind of funny because I feel like it's almost like a Russian doll bookend where
Yeah.
it's like, we have the bookend and then the that yellow bastard is kind of like the bookend within the bookend, and then you have the other two kind of in the center.
Yeah. So
But
it just
yeah,
doesn't.
just cut that up, and it just does not have the same sort of flow.
Yeah. Anywho, so that said, I think we're all up to speed.
Right. Well, I mean, let's start with, of course, the customer is always right, because I think this is just such a great cold open into this world. It sets the tone so nicely. I love how we see how this movie's going to play around with color with the red lipstick and the eyes and stuff like that. I don't know, man. Of course, Josh Hartnett just like on full blown, like this is like the coolest that Josh Hartnett has ever been on screen, I think.
Oh yeah. So again, I love how our four stories. I really like them being told out of sequence the way we are because it gives you Pulp Fiction vibes, which is appropriate given Tarantino, since Tarantino is in this. And it's just a strong choice, because we're able to end on like a full circle, note because with the customer is always right.
Yeah, and I just, like I said, I just think it's like just seeing the customer is always right. Parts 1 and 2 in segment without seeing the other stuff just feels so pointless to me.
But to your point about Hartnett, it's just great seeing like the salesman is like the idea. It's like it's like the romanticized hitman. Like basically women are I guess really conscientious like mobsters would hire this guy for the gentle goodbye. Like it's short, sweet.
Right. I love the concept. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, the job of this segment is not only just to sell the concept of the film to Frank Miller, but it's also, which is why it's the opening. But
it's doing the whole visual language. It's really kind of like the thesis statement. It's the overture, if you will, of
that's the thing.
Visual identity of the movie.
It's accomplishing a lot here. In addition to just like not only selling the writer, it's selling the tone of the tone is set for the movie. We have the film noir revitalized. We have the clever humor to it, like the end. I'll cash your check in the morning. You have this like artful, like kind of soulful, just kind of like this is my job, and I'll cash your check in the morning. Which is again, it's a clever it's a clever little button joke to add to that. Which again, it sets the tone for the humor that we might be working with here. It's not going to be out loud, ha ha ha, but it'll be like, oh, there's definitely kind of a wackiness here amidst our hard boiledness, which again is like
really a dark humor. Yeah,
like sure. I know you keep liking this site, edge lord, but this feels like kind of what he's going for here. Where this is like,
this absolutely is not edgelord, Dragon. I definitely think. I think so. I think the Dwight segment is the segment that I think is a little bit edgelord for me. But
I'm saying just with that stuff in general, I feel like this kind of sets the tone for why it would not be edgelord, but it's definitely like painted. It's.
I think it varies from story to story. Like, for example, I think the Marv stuff in this movie is so over the top that I feel like that's what sells it. Whereas, I don't know. We'll get into it. The Dwight storyline in this movie, like as much as I love Clive Owen, it's not that it's bad. I just think it's probably my least favorite out of the three main segments. But we'll get into it.
So the takeaway with Customers Always Right is that adventure is all around every turn of Sin City. It's a really great opening. It just sets up that folks strap in. You're going to have a lot of great
line of walk down any alley in Sin City and you can find anything.
Yeah, so here's something to mention, just in general with the writing. I guess from the comic as well, but just in the movie. Because basically, every time I'm citing the comic, I'm essentially citing the movie. But just
yes.
What's great about this compared to Frank Miller's later work, beyond post Sin City, and again, that really is kind of like the big distinct factor in kind of Frank Miller's writing, because it really does go off the other side when we get past 05. But
I mean, what's right around the corner.
Yeah, from this. That's what I mean. That's the clear distinction. But Frank Miller, I know we always joke about this with, because of Mr. Plinkett, but this really is the it's poetry, it rhymes kind of writing thing that he does here, where Frank Miller does a lot of repetition. Now, in later years, it's very hollow. It's very much, okay, it's just, I don't know why he's doing all the repetition, but the repetition here is to kind of set up and pay off in kind of our in kind of our very symmetrical kind of
No, in
callback.
this movie, I think it works flawlessly. I mean,
Yeah,
I think especially with the Hardigan stuff, there's
but that's what I'm
so
saying. The
many.
Hardigan is like the best.
Yeah,
I'm gonna gush about the Hardigan stuff so much.
I think the Hardigan stuff is definitely the heart of the movie for sure.
So I want to talk about Sin City as a character itself here before we go any
Yeah,
further.
definitely, definitely, because it's interesting because like you hear Sin City, and of course in popular culture you think Vegas, but
Yeah.
I like how this movie is like no, like this world is not even close to being Vegas. There's nothing artificial about it
So
beyond just obviously the visuals of it, but you know what I mean. Like conceptually, there's nothing artificial about it.
so it has been a long time since I've watched this movie from start to finish because you see it once and then you know all the segments. Sometimes you'll go back to the segments you really
Or
like.
you're like a little autistic kid like me, and you watch it like 10 times in a row over the course of like 2 weeks.
Okay. Regardless, so here's the detail. I never got because again I always saw like one full time like the segments back to back where I would have noticed this. But in preparation for this, I did notice this. I think it's like a cute little detail. I never the name of the city is Basin City, and then late in the past with the Hardigan stuff, it fully says Basin City. But of course, when we do the Marv story, which I think chronologically is our last, if not our second to last, because I think the way it's supposed to go is Hardigan's story is the first story that would happen chronologically, and the last story is Big Fat Kill because that's our big status quo potential
Sure,
shifting
sure.
story, and then Marv happens right before that. Anyway, so the Marv story when he leaves, when he drives out of town, we see like the BA in Basin is scratched out, and that so again it's like we've literalized Sin City, so that's where the nickname comes from, and of course the thematic nature of Sin City is that everyone's hands are a little dirty, the whole morality of it all. And also, I like the fact that we do have a religious component to our story. So with this, we literalize the sins. It's really clever.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I love the basically like every cop is corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely no separation between church and state. Church and
Yep.
state exist as one entity.
Church put state in power. Church made us
Yeah, yeah,
senators.
yeah. Just all these little things. Old Town, just as like it's really funny with Old Town because it's
Old
like
Town's the coolest bit of world building in the movie. Let's just say that
absolutely, and I'm
now.
sure we'll break it down more,
Yeah.
but I'll just say that Frank Miller, of course, is notorious for not writing women very well, but I think with this in particular, it's like obviously with Old Town, there's something very empowering about it. So I think Old Town as a concept is kind of like the last bit of like Frank Miller writing women as like, yes, they are technically sex workers, yes, of course, but they're empowered sex workers. They're
I mean,
not shit from anyone. They're
let's
their
just
own
say it.
boss.
These prostitutes are awesome.
Right, right, right. Yeah. But, of course, just like we're so close to Frank Miller just going like Vicky Vale sauntering around in her underwear. You
Yep.
know, we're so close to that.
Yep.
I'm on a date with Bruce Wayne.
Well, if
All
we learned anything, Frank Miller is in favor of the heart. Frank Miller is in favor of the heart-shaped fanny.
Yes. Oh God. Okay. Anyways, let's move on. So before I quote more of that scene.
Anywho, so again, all this stemming from Frank Miller being like the tried and true New Yorker. Again, to compare him to one of the other great Batman writers, Scott Snyder. Again, Scott Snyder very much operates off part of the logic that Frank Miller, to some degree, operate on, which New York is the city of if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, and that's basically what Scott Snyder literalized, and we're kind of doing that thematically here. The idea that the city is a character that shapes its inhabitants.
Sure, sure.
And again, the world building, just the interconnectedness. Again, it's very much kind of like it's kind of a weird combination of like imagine if you took the crossover appeal of Marvel's version of New York, but you gave it like the Gotham City kind of poetic, just kind of tone to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the otherworldliness of Gotham City, but again, like the friendly neighborhood, just kind of crossover appeal of Marvel.
Right.
Okay, so I guess. Oh, by the way, I got mentioned Katie's Bar, which is I love that as the central hub of the city. By the way, because it's like the bar. And fun fact, the only practical location in the movie for a very fun reason. It was just it was insurance just to make sure Frank Miller was happy and he wanted to actually take part in the movie. Because again, Rodriguez knows Frank Miller loves bars, so hey, I made the bar from the comic. So it's like the only fully practical set in the movie.
And it is like it's the hub geographically. It's the hub as far as like the characters like intersecting with each other in the story. All right.
All right, where do you want to take us, Tiki?
I mean, do you want to go? Do you want to do the Yellow Bastard Part 1 and 2, or do you want to bookend it?
Well, I mean, I kind of want to bookend it, but it's your call.
Let's bookend it. Let's just go ahead and go chronologically as the movie does. So, Yellow Bastard Part 1.
My favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, it's a strong start for sure. I really love all the bookends that we do get. Like an old man dies, a little girl lives.
Yeah,
like that.
So this is where I'm going to embarrass myself a little here. This is always my favorite part of the movie. It's a classic detective story, and there was a screenwriting class I took, and I did a detective story, and this was absolutely like this is the inspiration for sure. It's like, how can I measure up to this part of Sin City? So it was very much a model for me. I've been obsessed with this scene. It's again, specifically part 1. It's.
I mean, much like how I feel like with the customer is always right, it kind of is the thesis statement of the movie as far as like visually, like this is what we're getting into.
Yeah, aesthetically, it's what we're dealing with. Yeah,
this is kind of the thesis statement as far as like the actual world building, like all the police are corrupt, the non-separation of church and state being one terrifying entity, just not being able to trust anyone, just they're just like the cesspit of humanity just on display within the criminal underbelly that this opening segment represents.
Now I want to be clear. I love the entirety of the Hardigan story, but I love that just in a vacuum, had we not gotten the bookend that we got, the part 2 of this story, this is still a very like rock solid part. I could have still gone home happy with it. That to me is a mark of a really good story. I mean, both parts makes it even better, but just getting it.
Well, I remember the first time I watched this movie when the second part came on, it was like a surprise,
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, there's more of this. All right, let's go.
So what's really great looking back on this story is this is one of the rare times when Bruce Willis cares about a movie.
Absolutely. This is absolutely one of the fucking best Bruce Willis performances, bar none. I will fight anybody on.
And that is because Bruce Willis actually, he loved this. Again, of all the people, he loved the source material. And there's this charming little thing.
I think Bruce Willis's passion is just like, you do not see him this into what he's doing usually. It just leaps off the page, Dragon. He really just becomes the character.
Absolutely. And he loves it, and it shows. And I heard that when they cast him, it was basically, they showed him like the little clip where basically they had like pretty much everyone they wanted said yes to the movie. And they have like in the animatic, they had like, this person is him. And so Bruce Willis as Detective Hardigan, and Bruce Willis saw that, and he was like, he kind of charmed him, like, okay, I'm in. It was very like, there's an adorable story that Rodriguez tells, where basically Frank Miller went to the bathroom as he was showing Bruce Willis the clip, and he says like, "Hey Frank, guess what? Bruce is in." Like, oh man, I miss everything. It was like this. Anyway, but yeah, so I love that Hardigan is debatably like the most moral, like on the level character in the whole movie, and we torture him because he's an honest cop trying to do the right thing. It's like, again, he's the only character debatably without sin in this movie, and he's like, we put him through the ringer and we punish him for it. He's very much the Christ allegory and kind of in the sin, if you will.
I mean, yeah, Little Blue is kind of challenging my. I didn't say that it was like his all-time best performance.
Well, I'm saying the movies that Little Blue's citing are the ones like Pulp Fiction and Die Hard. Obviously, he cared about those as well. I think that's the mark of Bruce Willis giving his best, when he cares about the. When he cares about.
I just think Sin City is like up there. I don't think it's like objectively his best performance of all time, but it's
you did kind of make it sound a little like it was like the end all be all. I can get behind it. That's what you're saying, but it's still.
Well, my wording might have been a little
Yeah.
awkward. I meant to say like I would say it's like solidly like in the top 3. I mean, I don't know, like.
Like I'm saying, of the 3, I mean, those are that's a pretty solid 3. Sin City, Pulp Fiction, Die Hard.
And honestly, with Die Hard, like as good as Die Hard is, Die Hard's iconic. I feel like Die Hard is almost just kind of like Bruce Willis coasting on his natural screen presence.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Whereas I feel like with Hardigan, he's actually putting a little bit more into the character, if that makes sense.
Well, absolutely. And I think Bruce Willis I think what he really loved about this role is that, again, it is a throwback to, like, the hard-boiled detective mold, which so rarely, I don't think he's ever really gotten to play, it's
right.
Darn, I'm saying he's been thrown into action fair, and I think again I think he liked playing this role because, again, like Pulp Fiction, it was like in a vacuum where he didn't have to carry a whole movie, but he did get which I think maybe frees him a little bit more to like really throw himself into the role.
No, that is true because usually he is a leading man. Yeah.
And I get the sense that Bruce Willis gets kind of tired over being over the years. I feel like it's like, how many times can I just play the same action hero? It's like, how many times can I carry that for a whole movie without a Sam Jackson to play off of? What do I have?
Right.
I'm not saying he's not great and stuff. It's just that's kind of the challenge, though. You get a sense if you're like number one on the call sheet for a whole movie, and it's like, Bruce Willis, he gets bored easy. He's always the vibe that you kind of get from him in behind the scenes on a lot of these movies. Kevin Smith can probably attest to.
All right. Okay. One thing I want to highlight though is freaking Benicio del Toro, dude. I honestly think Benicio del Toro might have the single best performance in this whole movie. That might be a hot take.
Well, Benicio.
Okay, sorry, but Benicio?
Yeah, Benicio.
Benicio. All right. What was I saying? Benicio?
No, you're saying like with a V, Tiki, but it's like
I wasn't trying to. That's just
that's why I was thrown off by like Benicio.
That's like my hard Californian accent.
Like, what if he sold Venetian blinds? That's what Benicio del Toro is my new business.
But no, I mean, I just think his transformation. Like, I love how in the Hardigan stuff, he's still super sleazy. He's still like despicable. But then, as Jackie Boy, he just kind of takes on this whole other level. Like, I just think it's a very transformative performance. I think it's really impressive. Like, people usually zero in on, one of the big 3, Bruce Willis, Clive Owen, or Mickey Rourke. And that's for good reason. All 3 of them are very memorable in this movie. But I just think if you're looking at it, like, just pound for pound, how transformed he was, I think Del Toro is... he is the most impressive performance for me.
You just mean like how Del Toro is just in the role of Jackie Boy. He's a chameleon to this sleazy dirty cop, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. All right. Let's see. Again, I just real quick before we move on to stuff like Jackie Boy and everything. Again, I just love the stakes and just the climax just in our part 1 of the Hardigan story. I just love the same little girl from just an utter, like, the worst degenerate human that you've ever seen in Rourke Jr. And just the tension, the stakes, and this is like the hardball stuff I love in a bag. This is why I wrote that little like the little screen, the little like the writing class thing on this scene. I always love the climax. It was the idea of like, you can't even lift that cannon, Hardigan, and it's like, I take away his weapons, both of them, like, like.
And again, it's so cool how like all of that stuff like doubles back around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just that's what I'm saying. Like, oh my god, it holds up so freaking well, And it's the fact that we have the noir double cross with the partner played by Michael Madsen. Again, more Tarantino alumni, and but the thing that just always grabbed me about this segment was it was so heroic that he was stalling for time. That he basically, it feels so like Albuquerque versus Mike Ehrmantraut-esque. He's stalling for time, knowing that if again, like if he dies first, or if the point being like he could kill the girl because the girl is a witness. So if he can stall him though and distract him and take all the extra bullets for the kid, the backup will arrive and he won't be able to kill the girl. I thought that was so heroic, and I love that. Just again, flawless setup and payoff for later on. Okay.
Is it fair to say that Hardigan is basically the closest thing we have to a James Gordon in this movie?
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
All right. Okay, moving on. This was always my favorite segment. Like, I definitely think I've doubled back around to the Hardigan stuff being my favorite in the movie. But like when I was an edgy teenager, Dragon,
You know.
the Marv stuff in this movie just sang for me. Like,
It's great.
I mean, and I still think the Marv stuff in this movie is
I think it's everyone's favorite, frankly. I think everyone loves those.
well, I think it has the most. It obviously has the most visceral violence, the most memorable set pieces. I think, Dragon. It has the single most memorable moment in the movie, which I want to cite now, just so we don't bury the lead on it. All right, it's where Marv is dragging the guy across the fucking concrete as he's.
I don't know about you, but I'm having a ball.
I don't know about you, but I'm having a ball.
So Mickey Rourke, just again, fantastic.
I mean, that moment just lives rent free in my head, Dragon. That to me is like an iconic piece of filmmaking right there.
So how, just again, in terms of like adapting a comic character to the screen, again, is the makeup on Marv is still to this day, it is phenomenal. Just the fact that we gave him like the nose and the chin and everything. He basically, it's Mickey Rourke looking completely not like Mickey Rourke, but the performance is coming through. He just feels like Marv. I know that Marv basically feels like Hellboy. There's a lot of Hellboy in Marv, just as a human being. But again, it's the fact that so Marv is the biggest. He's kind of the biggest buy of the movie in terms of we don't know why he is as indestructible as he is, and could it be a stylistic thing where it's like. It's like he's like the Paul Bunyan of Sin City. He is like the storied figure. Oh, I saw Marv do this once.
I love how Dwight describes him, and I think that's one of the most effective uses we have of the Dwight character is how, he describes him as like basically like a man out of time, a gladiator, and for me, I kind of feel like that paints just enough of a picture where it's like, it's not exactly a supernatural thing, but it's more of like, just insane genetics, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean it's vague. It's vague enough, but it does suggest like there might be like the whole like Genghis Khan, or was it the whole Genghis Khan thing? Maybe that's why like deep down like some barbarian in him.
Right.
But yeah, he's this hulking bruiser of a tough customer. But again, the wonderful balance is that. As tough and violent and scary as this guy, as this walking Frankenstein of a
he's a fucking teddy bear underneath.
Yeah, it's the fact that again he does. There's such it's kind of a balance of there's Hellboy. There's also a lot of Ben Grimm. Imagine if Ben Grimm were I was saying it's more Hellboy at the end of the day, given especially the coat and everything. But I'm just saying there's like the softer side of him is Ben Grimm to a degree, where he is just this. He is the fact that it's this demented noir love story that is basically what his story is, and that he had one night with Goldie, and it made him feel human, and that's why it meant so much to him.
I love how he pretty much acknowledges the fact that it's basically a parasocial relationship. You know what I mean?
Like, he knows that
he's not oblivious to that, but at the same time, it's like it's just such a one track mind where it's like he knows that he's on that one track, but he's like so fucking devoted to it.
Like we established, he didn't know that she was a hooker, but that doesn't matter to him. There was no judgment. It's the fact that, like he said, like throughout his life, again, just looking the way he looked and the psychotic things that he's done, and like that's kind of the struggle that he's dealt with. The idea being, this guy. It seems to me the idea is that. Fundamentally, Marv is a good, well-meaning guy, but he does have he has a talent for violence. He has a violent nature, to quote another show. But again, a Frank Miller-inspired show, all the same. So it is kind of, it's all kind of relative. Marv's just always had that violent nature. The idea is he went to prison, he got out thanks to Lucille, as like his parole officer and everything. Well, not just thanks to her, but the idea is she's kind of gone to bat for him, and she has like a psychologist girlfriend, so all kind of anyway. There's sympathy for Marv. And my favorite thing with Marv is that Marv has a really interesting dynamic with the women of Sin City. Is that they all have, again, because they know there's not like a true threat of like him doing something like he's
almost like I don't want to say this in a creepy way because I don't mean it in a creepy way, but he's almost kind of like a surrogate father figure to a lot of them.
I mean, he's kind of like you gotta remember. we kind of even see this a little bit later on with Hardigan too, where it's like this the dichotomy of, and this was true of like the movies of the 40s and everything, where you do have like back in the day you had older men with younger women, and that was just more of like we can't cast a starlet over 30. It wasn't like necessarily an intentional thing, but it just kind of happened. And it's kind of in reference to that, but the effect of doing that is that we always have like it's kind of like the Electra complex to some degree. Women want like a man who's going to protect them, like the father that they wish went to bat for and protected them that way. It's kind of like the weird, the weird dichotomy there. So in a sense,
I mean, we
maybe
definitely obviously explored that with the Nancy character in
yeah.
part two, but
So
yeah.
that's what I mean. I think to some degree, a lot of those credits transfer with Marv to everybody, though, in that they all kind of wish they had a male figure in their life that they there wasn't a sexual relationship, as we established, where Marv, he wasn't again romantic. He could never bring himself to buy a woman, which we established. But again, I think there was a lot of respect there. Like they I don't know, there was some, especially with the ladies of Old Town, where Marv treated them with respect. You get the vibe
Mhm.
of, and then we also had the whole thing where he could have escaped those ropes at any time, but he would have had to hit her, and he doesn't hit girls. He doesn't like to hit girls, at least.
Mhm.
So there's something kind of chivalrous about Marv, despite all the horrible things that he does to people.
It's almost kind of like he's terrifying if he's not on your side,
Yeah,
but if you know he's on your side, then it's like you're good.
but you know what I also think it is. I think it's that again. He is. It's kind of like the Tony Stark appeal with through comics, where it was that he was always the wounded puppy. Tony Stark, he had the heart. It was like the nursemaid principle, where Marv has mental, has some mental issues, and may specifically,
Right, right,
he
right.
has a lot of. I don't know if it's paranoia per se, but he has like, he gets confused a lot. He has a lot of head trauma. Like we see where that would stem from. He gets hit in the head with God knows what. He gets
I really do think it's mostly head trauma. Yes.
so I think he gets confused, which possibly sends him the violent fits of rage, or at the very sense what they labeled him as, the potential for psychopathy, all this. There's also like I think in it was always speculated that like the MAON gene, like the warrior gene, stuff like that. I think maybe that was probably labeled or thrown at him. I don't know.
Well,
The
that's
point,
kind of what I was talking about with Dwight's monologue.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that. The point being, I think they all see kind of like the Marv's like he's like a pit bull, but like that'll like if you rub his belly, he'll love you till the day you die, kind of
Right. Basically.
So that's like so he knows full well that she's kind of doing this for protection, but it's like a pity that he's never had that's made him feel like human, alive, and like part of society. So it meant the world to him, and I love that he vows to avenge Goldie based on that alone, not caring who or the reasons or anything else. Just it's not right. This woman gets killed after she's done like an angelic thing for him. Again, the whole sin thing, angel, and given what his target ultimately is, it's kind of funny that she's calling him an angel. She's calling her an angel. So tell
Yeah.
us about Kevin.
Oh, we need to talk about Kevin. Yeah, fucking Elijah Woods coming in for like a very brief but incredibly creepy role, man. Seriously.
Far creepier than his role in Spy Kids 3.
Yes, definitely, definitely. No, I mean it's like I feel like him and the Yellow Bastard are kind of like a good sort of like Kevin is almost kind of like a preview of what the Yellow Bastard is eventually gonna be. You know what I mean?
Well, I love that all of them are linked. They're all like members of the Rourke family.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
he's like the cousin of the Yellow. He's
Mhm.
yeah.
It's like kind of giving you a taste. Like in the Yellow Bastard, I feel like we save him for the end because it's kind of like like he almost kind of like breaks the color code of the movie. He's so evil. It's like.
Yeah.
But anyways, we'll build to that. We'll build to that. But
Well, yeah. So Kevin, I love that Kevin is like the antithesis of Marv. He is like thin and wiry and quick, and that really disquiets him. Well, literally, it disquiets him, and that's the advantage that he has over Marvin. He's been hunting for this guy the whole segment. Then he finds him, and Kevin gets the drop on him. And then we learn like, how is Kevin going to be worse than Marvin? Oh boy, do we learn it with poor Lucille. So Lucille, the parole officer, who was like the supply of Marvin's medicine and everything. She looked into things, and this is something that was in the extended cut a little bit, not in this segment, but for example, when Hardigan is sentenced, or well, not sentenced, when Hardigan, takes the plea deal. you'll see, blink and you miss in the theatrical. Lucille is there, and I'm still not sure how exactly this works, but I guess the idea is she's also maybe a lawyer and a parole officer. I'm not sure how that works. I think that's why I prefer that they cut it the way they did. But you saw her like have a scene with Hardigan where she's been like trying to get him out and fighting the system, and it really broke her heart that he had to take the deal. And there was like a scene that kind of depicted that before. We saw her like brief cameo later on. But
Right.
Lucille was a really great, and I love Carla Gugino, by the way. Of course, Spy Kids and Watchmen. So she's in good company.
And of course, Haunting of Hill House, most notably.
Oh, that too.
For recent viewers.
So Carla Gugino is just phenomenal here. I'm just so sad. Like me, my hangups. The idea she's lost the hand, and she sucked the meat off my fingers and made me.
Oh my god! Oh yeah, they made me watch. Oh god!
So the idea that Kevin Rourke
probably is one of the most brutal scenes in the whole movie. I think just your delivery of it.
The idea that Kevin is a cannibal and he and the wolf, like basically eat the victims from the neck down and like keep them in the fridge. Basically, very much Jeffrey Dahmer with the glasses too. They had to be a fool there, but it's just the idea that we're he's just this mute, irredeemable piece of psychotic garbage.
Right.
Oh my! I love I love like this is. I wonder what your take on this is. I kind of view it that each generation of Rourke gets progressively worse and more evil because
because like I said, this guy is basically like a prelude to Yellow Bastard. So yeah.
No, I just mean like with the fathers and then the offspring. Because if you look at him and Yoka Jr., like collectively, the second generation is even more evil and twisted. Like one's essentially a child murdering pedophile, and the other one is he's a cannibal.
Mm-hmm.
Then of course beyond that you have like just the patrons of corruption through the city, and apparently Sin City, and I forget if this is still happening. I think they're doing it as a comic, but there is like the idea of Sin City was like founded since the days of the Old West. So I wonder what it was like back then, how evil just it gets through the generations.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So it's pretty brutal with Kevin. Then we have the twin sister thing. How do you feel about the twin sister thing?
I think it's all right. I think it's kind of like I don't know. For me, it's almost kind of like the one time where I feel like Marv is almost a little bit too like holding Goldie up on such a pedestal that whenever he so much as sees her, it just like stops everything in its tracks. Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like there's just a little bit of an awkwardness to it that I can't quite put my finger on.
Here's the thing. It feels very classic story convenience noir, which is a thing. And for example, I think I showed you this when we talked when we were talking about in the animated series, and I showed you the motion comic for Two of a Kind. It was the black and white. Bruce Timm did the art for it. It was basically Two-Face falling in love with the twin sisters. Like Harvey Dent had his face fixed, and he fell in love with a woman. And then her sister was like, he found out, oh my god, my fiance has a twin sister, and this like throws my whole obsession with twos into chaos. And it was a black and white noir tale with Two-Face. So because of that, I always kind of had a fondness for like, okay, this feels on brand for kind of comics noir. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel it's not a big issue. I just kind of feel like maybe like
it's a buy. I want to be clear. It is a buy.
It is a buy.
Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like the twin sister is always a buy, but given it as a noir and given it as Marv, and we're already playing fast and loose with okay, Marv's pretty indestructible.
Like I said, I think my whole thing is that like it's already a little bit of a buy how much he's holding Goldie up on a pedestal and just going completely like it's an awesome buy. Don't get me wrong. Like it's like we're fully on board for it. But I think then introducing this whole like, oh, it's the twin, and whenever she shows up, it totally like throws him off balance. I don't know. It's just a little bit too convenient for me. It's fine. I don't think it derails the movie or the story or anything. It's just if I were to pick out an element of this story to nitpick, it would probably be this.
Yeah. All right, let's see. So I guess just with Marv in general too, just to kind of round a few things here. So yeah, Marv, we have like the twisted and just kind of cathartic humor of just how unapologetically himself that he is. This guy's just he knows what he is. He's basically Frankenstein black in a trench coat.
Mhm.
But it's the fact that our think about this our male majority of our male characters in this movie, like are male leads. They're characters with a code. And his again, he doesn't hurt girls. The norm of it's just this is like a weird comparison for Marv. By the way, I just want to get in there. I feel he's like the norm of Sin City.
Norm is in Cheers, Norm?
Yes, I think he's like think about it because he's at Katie's bar. Everyone knows
Right,
Marv.
right,
Mind you, Dwight knows like the like that to be scared of Marv, but he still knows about Marv. That's what I'm saying. Like in a weird sense of the word, I guess technically Dwight is kind of like he's kind of like the Sam Malone of Sin City.
Dwight doesn't give you Frasier vibes a little bit.
Yeah, well, okay, I like it. Okay, I'll give you that for Frasier. Yeah,
I mean, I'm just saying he's the one who's trying to be like a little bit more, up class.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
All
Anyway,
right.
but yeah, he's just feel. I love that he's like Norm in the sense that he is like he's the regular, and he and I'm trying to remember. Not there's a lot of great female names here. Not Wendy, but Shirley. No, Shelley. Sorry, I don't know what
Really,
I
yeah.
meant. Shelley. Sorry. I love that he and
That's
Marvin.
Brittany Murphy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, very. Every time I see Brittany Murphy in anything, man, there's definitely a little bit of an air of melancholy to it.
This was the big one for her, though. This was like the big, like iconic, like Brittany Murphy movie role.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so Shelley and Marv are kind of the connecting tissue. Shelley's the one who makes it, though. So Shelley's technically the bigger connective tissue between all the stories, and then she kind of pops up to Katie's bar, and Marv is also there. Like Marv's the regular. So I don't know. He's kind of like that. So it's such a big. So Marv he ends up going up against Cardinal Rourke after he dispatches with Kevin, which to me is probably the most shocking, violent thing we do in the movie, in which we keep hyping up what is Marv going to do to make Kevin suffer, and what he does is pretty awesome, pretty messed up. Tiki, you want to tell the folks?
Nah, you can go ahead.
So yeah, he basically he cut Kevin limbs off and tied him up with surgical tubing.
Right.
So he could feed him to his pet wolf to basically give him a taste of his own medicine, and just the idea that Kevin, he was perfectly content with this, even to the end when Marv cut his head off.
Yeah. No, for real. That's
Most messed up Elijah Wood.
Elijah Wood just giving like that 1,000-yard stare as it's going down.
That was his audition, by the way. He just gave Frank Miller a creepy smile. Like that's essentially what it was. And Frank was like, okay, like Rodriguez is like, okay, come on, like, okay, look, I'm gonna sell you on this guy, Frank. And he shows him, he's like, okay, Elijah's coming. Like I think it was like a video thing or something. He's like, come in and sit down and just smile. And he does it. Just like Frank Miller's creeped out. I was like, okay, he's our man. But yeah, anyway, so then he just the fact that we take it up to Cardinal O'Rourke, honestly, the most powerful Rourke in the movie, because he's the one who put Senator Rourke in his job. So he's the older brother, Rucker Hauer. And the fact that he, again, unapologetically, he and his son ate streetwalkers. They ate these girls to eat their souls, and because no one would miss, the hookers of Sin City.
Right.
And again, just Marv. I love that we don't see what Marv does to him, but the idea is like he basically pulled a kingpin from Born Again. That's presumably what he's doing here.
Essentially, yes.
But oh god, it is. I just love it. It's just like the killing. No, I'm not going to enjoy that. But everything leads up to it. It'll be a gas. Just great. So the death of Marv. This was always the shocking, like the big draw. One of the big draws of Sin City. They made an action figure of Marv's death. By the way, I think.
Did they really?
Seriously.
No, I definitely think it's one of the most. It's one of the most iconic moments. The whole like, is that all you got, you pansies?
Oh, it's great. So, but yeah, they did make like a McFarlane Toys. I think they made the it was NECA or McFarlane Toys. They made this figure from the comic where I might have been the movie. I would say the movie version, Mark, because it talked. It was basically you have him in the electric chair. You can flip the switch, and I think he says,
"You got it already. I ain't got all night."
I think he says both phrases like, "I ain't got all night." Like you hear the electric. You got your pansies.
That's great. That's awesome.
There is an actual figure of that moment, which is just I've seen it many a time when I walked
I
my
mean, it's
dog.
just like what I love about that. It's just like Marv at this point has just like reached such a fucking high of like just pure gladiator badassness, and it's just like how can you get him more just badass than we've seen him? Like, just go out. It's such a blaze of glory moment, right?
I still think the coolest moment that leads up to that for me is one of Marv's coolest moments is when he's inner monologue. He's basically talking about, and like, he wishes like someone would just like kill him while he's in the bed because he just thinks it's all so
Uh-huh.
stupid. Like, they brought him back. Oh god, why couldn't they shoot me in the head anyway? So he's being like, beat. The cops trying to beat a confession out of him because obviously they don't want to admit, like, the most powerful guy in Sin City who runs the city was responsible for this heinous act. So the ADA like basically like turns off the tape and threatens to kill his mother. And by the way, in the extended cut, you did see there was a really lovely scene with Marv's mother that did cut out, but we don't need it. But was really cute. Like, he visits his mom, and she's blind, so she can't really see that he's there to pick up his gun. It's really cute. So he visits his mom. Probably she likes him to stay there. It's adorable. Anyway, the point being, they threaten to kill his mom. He's the look that he gives them, and he says, "I break his arm in 3 places, then I sign the thing." Just the fact that he'll do what he does to protect his mom, and even if it means like allowing people to call him bad names and even kill him, it's like
Right.
I don't know. It's a classic Marv moment, and again, just showing that there is a heart to this guy, and that heart, speaking of which, gives us our money shot at the end, where we see the last thing that's running through his mind when he's dying is the one moment of bliss that he had with Goldie, like the little like heart in the eye thing, him in the heart shaped bed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All
Yeah.
right. Okay, so yeah, let's move on to the big fat kill. Dragon, I definitely think this segment it's really good. Like I think it excels in the world building and fleshing out Old Town and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just, for me, Dwight has always been and it's not even that Dwight is not compelling. I think he is compelling. I just think out of the three leads, he just kind of is not as charismatic as the other two, and it's really through no fault of the actor. It's just, like Hardigan is, of course, like the
It's stiff
James Gordon,
competition.
right? Like Hardigan is the James Gordon, and then Marv is just kind of like, by all intents and purposes, kind of like the most badass Frank Miller Batman type
Yeah.
art, and so where does that leave Dwight? Dwight's just Dwight, so I don't know. It's like I've always kind of struggled with this segment. It's right in the middle of the movie. It's all good stuff. But I just, for some reason, it just doesn't stick out as much as the other stuff does. Do you have that same thing with this segment?
I mean, I always look. I love Clive. I always felt Clive Owen in general was just really underrated, and I always loved him as Dwight McCarthy. And I don't know. I really liked it. And I really liked that I think he really comes alive when you have like the whole relationship with Gail at play there. So he has a really interesting backstory. It's the fact that Dwight is like the killer who's trying not to kill, So he has there are three very different kind of things going on with each of these characters. I like that each of our male leads have like questionable or mysterious backstories, or like things that we don't know about their past. Now, mind you, Hardigan is the one we have pretty much. We know everything we need to know about Hardigan. Marv, again, it's like we don't, Dwight gave us a bit of a peek at like, oh man, you see, Marv is like he's like this, this gladiator of sorts, where he's just he's known throughout. He's the Paul Bunyan figure of Sin City, where we don't need to know. Like Marv was sent to jail. We don't want to know what Marv was sent to jail for. My God, but yeah. So the fact is, Dwight has the most mysterious backstory, and I will tell you this, Tiki. So in the sequel, they do go into so Dwight is the main character in Dame to Kill For, and unfortunately now mind you, the long and short of it is that we mention here that Dwight has a new face. That's from the books. The idea is that Dwight, again, he's probably an ex-hitman, I believe is the like an assassin, tough customer, cool guy. He's a smart killer is the idea. And he changed his face with plastic surgery, so now he looks like Clive Owen back. And then Dame to Kill For, unfortunately, we can't bring Clive Owen back because of that reason. So it wasn't just they couldn't get Clive Owen; it's that we can't get Clive Owen because it's going to be set in the past. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So they got Josh Brolin to play him in that movie.
Huh. Okay. I mean,
it's not bad, but it's kind of disappointing.
No, that's good casting. I feel like Josh Brolin, like, he fits into Sin City, but my issue with that is that, like, even though, like, I assume the plastic surgery was to, make him look more appealing, but still, it's like there's kind of an age gap thing there, like Josh Brolin feels older than Clive Owen does in this movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that was again another kind of not so much a feather. It was kind of a detriment to Daniel.
Right.
The point being, I don't know. I still think Dwight McCarthy. Edgy as he may be, I think it's like edgy because this is a guy who's like actually has conflict.
Like I said, I feel like Dwight is kind of like right in the middle between, like, if Marv is just like complete 100% like over the top parody of like a hard boiled character, and then Hartigan is kind of the heart and soul. Dwight kind of exists right in the middle. He's like that kind of like murky sort of morally ambiguous, chaotic neutral territory.
Well, in a way, Tiki, it's you're right. The chaotic neutral is a good way of putting it. But that's the thing. If you think about it this way, in terms of like the sin of it all, okay, Hartigan has not committed a sin, okay, and he's like very much like the whole point of like the second part of his story is that he's doing everything, he's holding out and not admitting to the sin that he didn't do. Marv, he's committed God knows how many sins, so he's full on accepting. Yeah, this is life. Where Dwight, again, McCarthy's like, this is a guy who has red in his ledger, but he is trying to be kind of like, he's trying to be like a Hartigan, though. He is trying to be like, he's not like a wantless, just kind of violent kind of guy. He's very calculated violence. I don't know. I just like,
we see in the beginning with the Jackie Boy confrontation, how, like, he'll kick some ass if he needs to, but he's all about conflict resolution. Like, he's trying to defuse the conflict. That's kind of his MO.
I just like that he had I like that it's three different flavors of those characters, Tiki, and I like that, even when he is like drowning Jackie Boy, you'll notice there's this really great touch where the black and white, it's like the white intensifies as he's like giving that death stare to the camera. It's like, really, the guy has such an intensity, but he's just trying to keep it in line. Here's a weird comparison, okay? If Hartigan's Gordon and Marv's Batman, I might say McCarthy's kind of Daredevil.
Well, I was gonna say he almost might be like the Punisher, but yeah, no, the Daredevil. No, I think Daredevil's actually more on point because he's a little bit more morally good than Frank Castle, I think. So yeah, I could see it. I could see it.
The capacity for
very much like a hard-boiled Frank Miller Daredevil, obviously.
Yeah, which is kind of where we started, because he started in the Stan Lee era. That's where Daredevil made his mark, though. The Frank Miller noir.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, but again, the connective tissue of the world building really is apparent in Big Fat Kill, where we have like Shelley at Katie's, we even saw earlier on in the Marv story, like that's how they met. Shelley saw Dwight there, making goo eyes at him, and so we. Oh boy, Jackie Boy again. Just the idea that we have this degenerate, this hero we reveal to be a hero cop, but he's like walking blackout drunk. He's just making he's not making any rational decisions here.
Well, I mean, I love how he basically uses, like, you almost get the sense that he did his heroic action as a way to just essentially get a free pass.
Yeah,
like there's absolutely no moral good in this guy. This guy is like a total piece of shit. Like I think this guy is definitely the biggest piece of shit in the movie that's not a Rourke.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah.
Because
Junior's the worst Rourke of them all. I mean, he's the worst. Well, that's the weird thing. Who's worse? Okay, the guy who eats people, or the guy who violates children and kills them when they scream? Like I don't know.
Oh God! I mean, it's like I feel like just emotionally, you got to go for the child predator.
I know that's the thing. I
feel like on a visceral level, the cannibal thing might be. Oh God! It's a real Sophie's choice. It really is.
It's gonna sound really weird. It's the fact. Here's the weird. Okay, look, obviously, there's no right answer, but if I had to pick, I'd say Junior's worse only because the women of Old Town can protect themselves, and this
Sure,
is like
sure,
six
that
women
makes
who
sense.
slipped through the cracks. So this is like, again, in theory, they had the better chance than the kids did. In
That makes
theory,
sense. I'll sign off on
it's a
that.
very. It's not a great reason, but it's I'm just saying, if the moral calculus here, it's like. I don't know.
Okay, Dragon. So so Disney's doing that stupid villain show at Hollywood Studios, and it's like, which villain got the most screwed over? What if we had that show, but just with the Rourkes?
Well, I think technically this might be a Disney movie because the Miramax thing.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Technically, I think so. Although I did have to rent this movie, so I think Disney's not openly like,
No,
"Hey,
no.
a family picture, Disney Plus."
But again, via Hulu though.
Also, Miramax is also very tainted by the Weinstein thing, which
That
is
is true. There's no
probably a bigger reason why Disney doesn't want to touch that part of their library.
sadly nothing we can really do about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, so let's see, Miho, by the way, of all the girls of Old Town. Again, the way I love the way Old Town works. So, to talk about Old Town a little bit more here. So I love that Old Town was like this compromise of like there were the days of old where it was like the bad days of old where there was like war between like the girls of Old Town and the cops and the mob, and essentially the way it worked it out was like, okay, the girls of Old Town can run their business so long as they kick back to the cops, and because of this the cops will let them do whatever they need to do, but if a cop shows up, you can't kill a cop, otherwise that breaks the truce.
Right, right.
you know so I love that there are rules of this place. This is like the Chinatown district of Sin City. This is like, where you would play by a different set of rules here. It's just the fact that, we have, of course, the wonderful and the very sexy in this movie, very wonderful Rosario Dawson as Gail.
Rosario Dawson was kind of like all over our like formative R-rated movies in this time period, wasn't she?
That she was, yes. Yeah, Clerks too.
Uh-huh.
I don't mean Clerks as well. I mean Clerks too.
Yeah, yeah.
So she had a ball here. So Frank Miller was he had to be sold on Rosario Dawson, but he was like the moment she was in the car. Oh my God, she's great. But also Frank Miller's baby in this movie was Miho. Like there was this Tiki was like the most adorable.
What's funny is that I do think that Miho, like, she's a cool character and concept. I kind of feel like okay, how to touch this? Like, I think Miho in this movie is almost like, it is funny that you mentioned that she was kind of Frank Miller's pet project, because I feel like she's the closest thing that we get to basically like objectifying a character, if that makes sense. Like, she's a badass, don't get me wrong, obviously, but she's almost kind of like a badass, like in a like an unreachable sort of sense. I don't know. Am I making sense at all? Like,
I think if I could, may I interpret what you're saying?
Sure.
I think what you're trying to say is she is the most ground up, like kind of the most Frank Miller tropey character, kind of.
Yeah, definitely.
Think about it, okay? Yeah. They have the samurai thing, because I think Frank Miller did like the Ronin comic as well. So you have they have the samurai, you have like the themed prostitute, and you have the Nazi swastika, which is for some reason
right. No, definitely. I do think it's the swastika that kind of sends it over the.
I want to be clear. Frank Miller, he's very pro-American, but by that logic, he's he loves to really drive into the not so subtle symbolism of fascism in there. He really loves to work it in there, and literally we turn into a weapon in this movie, which is still really funny to me. So that's what I'm saying. Like in a movie that on the whole is very much like kind of Frank Miller, like kind of like in the pre-Hat era. That's like embodied. This is like basically like a taste of what Frank Miller would do in the Spirit. In the Spirit,
you know what
movies.
she feels like, Dragon? She feels like All-Star Batman and Robin's fucking Black Canary almost.
Oh, sure. And what I'm saying to you is like the Spirit movie has like the large majority, like all of our villain stuff in the Spirit movie is essentially all that deranged kind of Frank Miller stuff where it has no point, but it's just kind of there.
Sure.
It's like we have like Sam Jackson putting on a Nazi uniform, but also putting on like he's going for like a Japanese just kind of samurai get like just randomly, just no reason for it. It's just Makes no. Again, that's the thing. If we look at, I don't.
with it.
I'm not just trying to throw the Spirit movie under the bus, but at the same token,
No, but honestly, seriously, like the Spirit movie and this movie are a very good kind of like this movie's so good specifically because it establishes its own niche, and the Spirit movie is just like so desperately trying to be this.
That's the thing. Like that movie, everyone.
Why not just make Sin City 2 at the time that you made the Spirit at that point? You know,
the idea is like everyone flocked to the Spirit because they thought, okay, more Sin City. Why wouldn't I go see that?
Yeah, but I feel like the problem with the Spirit 2 was like you said, it's like, you know, this is kind of like, you know, like the Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller. The Spirit is very much
Dark Knight Strikes Again.
And Robin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd say the Spirit is kind of comfortably somewhere between Dark Knight Strikes Again, All-Star Batman, and Robin.
There you go.
Over the top. Not quite as over the top as All-Star Batman and Robin.
That's true. Anyway, so Emil, I
still want an animated adaptation of All-Star Batman and Robin, by the way, and I want them to lean full in on how over the top it is.
By the way, I suspect the reason the Spirit turned out the way it did. Now, mind you, the Spirit was made with good intentions because, you know, this is like something really nice, by the way, because now we do all the time, but back then this was a very rare thing. In the credits of this movie, you'll notice like the special thanks section, you know, has like a lot of great comic talent that's like shared. That had nothing to do specifically with this movie or Sin City, but basically it said Frank Miller wanted to pay tribute to the influences behind the comic that also were adapted into this movie. It's like Wally Wood and you know, and Will Eisner, who again created the Spirit, and like all the comic brethren, like the friends who like again they influenced him, like Denny O'Neil probably.
Eisner.
Yeah,
I mean, I know it's not related, but still, I've always found that amusing.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's so. While well intended, with that in mind, you know, again his mentor was like Will Eisner, and he wanted to pay tribute to him. That said, you know, I feel that without Rodriguez to really show him the ropes and just you know kind of hold his hand, like be his partner in crime, that's why the Spirit suffered. Where Frank Miller, he solely directed that movie.
Sure,
was the I think that was the main issue there. Where it's Frank Miller unfettered. It's kind of the Bruce Timm Paul Dini effect, you know, with Harley Quinn, where you know you take Paul Dini out of the equation and you just have like the visual, you don't have the substance.
Right, definitely.
All right, let's see. Oh yeah, Mijo. I bring up the Mijo thing with Frank Miller because you know, on the set, the way it kind of went was that Rodriguez was directing, you know, Rosario Dawson and Frank Miller. He basically ground up like he was the main director on all the Mijo stuff, and they had this. They joke about it. They had kind of the sensei, kind of you know, pupil kind of vibe, you know, sensei student vibe. Where basically she like. Again, he was like her samurai master at every time he gave her direct. It was like really awesome. It's the idea that he was like she was like a trained soldier in terms of his like him directing her, and they were having.
Yeah, I mean, she does come across as very badass on screen. Don't get me wrong. Just kind of like again conceptually, she's a little over the top.
Yeah.
You know what one of my favorite set pieces in the whole movie is?
What?
The tar pits.
Yeah, the tar pits.
I love the tar pits. It's one of the most unique locations. It really gives the city some flavor.
Do you want to hear something really cute about the tar pits?
Oh God, sure.
Okay, so Robert Rodriguez, he asked Frank Miller, "Hey Frank, I meant to ask you, why the dinosaur for the tar pits?" And in the comic, why the heck is it like just a giant? Which is why they put it in the movie. Says, "Oh, because I just really wanted to draw a dinosaur."
I mean, it checks out.
It's pretty much like dinosaurs are awesome. I just really wanted to draw one.
Well, I mean, I have a bit in my where it's like my favorite movie of all time is Jurassic Park because dinosaurs, you know,
pretty much.
no explanation needed, just dinosaurs.
Yep, you just really are that little kid from Mitchell's First Machines growing up.
Basically, yes, I am. I mean, objectively, yes. Anyways.
Okay, so I think honestly my favorite Clive Owen bit in the whole movie. By the way, I love it where then I reach into after he says like I pull out $300 in 20s. I'm not too ashamed to admit I put in my own pocket. Then he has the lines. It's like then I reach in, I find an atom bomb. Oh, I love that line so much. Totally, I pull out an atom bomb, and it's like the badge, which again is like oh my god, the panic. Basically, so Wallenquist is, and this is interesting. This is where Frank Miller, again, very more subtly than he ever does anywhere else, mind you. Wallenquist is the mob. We don't see the mobster. We don't see the boss. We just see Michael Clark Duncan as Manute, who is like the lieutenant.
And how good is it to see Michael Clark Duncan again, man? Like, I forgot just how much of a screen presence this dude had.
He's like Darth Vader in this movie, man.
Totally.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like, he's just menacing. He's cool. He's got he cuts a very
obviously
silhouette.
Vincent D'Onofrio is the definitive Kingpin, but I think his Kingpin is still pretty damn cool.
It was, for under the circumstances that they had for that movie, he was the best Kingpin we could have had for that. All right, in terms of what we had at the time. Again, no D'Onofrio, but he was great. That was it's a fantastic Elseworlds version of Kingpin. Okay, if you had a Kingpin who's raised in Brooklyn, not Brooklyn, in the Bronx. If a Kingpin was raised in the Bronx, that's who you want.
Totally.
Anyway, but yeah, so the idea is, there was Wallenquist is like a German, it's like a German mafia sort of thing. That's why we have Manute kind of dressed like an SS guy, and that's where we get a little bit of the whole Nazi thing.
It's a little bit of a taste of what the spirit is going to turn into. Yeah.
So that's the thing. So I love that it's subtle though, and we have the way Manute is dressed, and we have the one swastika that Jackie Boy sits on. So we got that. So the point being, the mob's been looking for an excuse to go back to the days of old, and this is exactly what Manute has been looking for, to get rid of the dregs of Sin City. So I love the lust and attraction between Dwight and Gale. It's the most noir bit in the whole movie. The whole thing of you get that gun in my face, I'm gonna slap you, and he slaps her, and you think, oh god, it's so tense. Mio might cut him the ribbons, and it's they make out, and they have great noir dialogue. He says, "Always love you, baby, always and never." It's that's Frank Miller.
That's so good. Yeah,
that's Frank Miller doing his Daredevil Elektra thing right there. It's this is why everyone loves Elektra, because this is the kind of writing that he does. So then we have Tarantino's paranoid car rides. That's the whole Tarantino thing. So the Jackie Boy's corpse. Overall, how do you feel about?
I mean, it's definitely a standout of the movie, and the fact that it is so dialogue driven does really, make sense that Tarantino directed it. I mean, obviously, I think it's one of the more memorable. I think it's definitely the most memorable part of this segment for me. I mean, just based on just how high concept it is, if anything else.
Now, I have one sole criticism with this movie.
Okay.
It's not Tarantino. Tarantino's fine. It's right after Tarantino. When we go to the tar pits, I think the IRA bombers, they were a little too broad and action mandaty. I forget if they were in the original comic or not. I don't know. They probably were. Otherwise, why would they be here? But just the idea. I don't know if it's just the way we shoot it. This is the one time where the stylized look just looks a little for example, I want to be clear. I love the solution we blow up Jackie Boy's head. That makes sense. That's kind of why we need the IRA bombers. I realize that. I get it. But
sure.
Having hey, I'm a mercenary and I use explosives.
No, you're absolutely right. It does kind of just visually, they just kind of come out of nowhere. Yeah.
For example, early, look at the Hardigan. Okay, Hardigan when he's shooting guys, they're going they're flip flopping on wires across the room. That's stylized. Okay, but we've now introduced grenades and bombs. He just happens to have them all in the sewer, and he's just the way we're blowing the Clive Owen all over the place. That to me is stretching the realm. Miko rides a grenade to safety.
Exactly.
But that's the one singular cut I would have made from the movie if we could have just at the very least just kept that to a minimum. Just felt like a bit much.
Yeah, and I mean, generally speaking, like I said, I do think that this segment has a lot of good stuff in it. You're absolutely right. The Clive Owen and Gale stuff is fantastic. Just Dwight as a character is very compelling, but I do think that just conceptually, it goes a little bit too broad in the places that the other two stories don't. So, it is really good and on its own merit, but I would say it's probably 3 out of 3 if I were to rank the main segments.
Yep. One thing just to get it in there, just before we move on, I do think one of the great definitive noir moments of this movie was, again, a tribute to Brittany Murphy, when basically Dwight puts it together right after he finds the atom bomb that we cut back to it like she wasn't saying stop, she was saying cut.
That was great. That was great.
Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always love that moment from this movie. Oh my god, that's like the great noir. If each chapter has like the great noir payoff, like that's the great noir payoff for this segment.
Totally, totally.
All right, and again, just clever plotting of just Becky sells him out, and Dwight has like the ambush idea. Where that's why everything kind of turns pear shaped because Becky sold him out for like the lie of like we can get you out of Sin City. Nope, gonna kill her anyway. Oh, what did you think of like here's a Frank Miller signature? We had like the funny the funny kind of like goons. Like, what did you think about?
Oh yeah, no, I'm glad you bring that up because honestly, I think it just kind of adds like a unique flavor, just in a like it kind of comes out of nowhere, right? It's just kind of like, oh, okay, we're doing like goofy humor with these henchmen. All right, I'm here for it.
So the henchmen are kind of like they're kind of like the mutants from Dark Knight Returns, like Bob.
A
I
little
think
bit, yeah,
Rob
yeah.
and Don, I believe, were
Right,
the
right.
two. Like, specifically in Dark Knight Returns, you had two lead like mutant characters, Rob and Don. That's the idea that they would just So
Mhm.
this is kind of like, for example, we have like two pairs of henchmen. Like for Junior, we have Schlub and Clem.
Oh God.
And they're married like Schlub and Clem. They're dynamic. I think they're better, mind you. It's like Schlub and Clem is like Nick Offerman plays like the silent Schlub. He's like he likes driving, boosting and driving really nice cars for their jobs. And you have Clem who's like this very He's very thesaurus like in his
Mhm.
vocabulary. He's very erudite in his language choice and everything. He's just like he's so chatty and it's like love it. And then like keep it keep it simple. The question that you seek in the farm, just like okay, he's gonna kill me if I use my usual shtick here. I'm just gonna squeak out the farm.
Right, right. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so the other guys too is we got the swastika on his head. He gets like hit with all the arrows. Just kind of that was a fun little staple of Frank Miller. Okay, so but yeah, so like the choosing of the battlefield was like the great like the great undoing to our bad guys here. Again, using the city against them, just really tightly written. But you're right, of the three, maybe not the go-to. However, interestingly, it is the longest, and I wonder if that worked to its detriment or not.
Well, like I said, I do think the fact that it's also right in the middle too also is kind of like I feel
Yeah.
like that has it kind of like it's got an uphill battle just based on the placement of it within the movie, I think.
Interestingly, though, I do love that all of our endings, specifically Big Fat Kill and Harrigan's story, they do feel very like okay, these are endings you could go home very satisfied with. Like for example, the end of Big Fat Kill does. Now, I think we end in the right place ultimately, but it's just that if we did end in Big Fat Kill, which chronologically is where the ending really is, it does feel like, hey, this is like adventures around every turn at Sin City. We have like the world building represented in the women of Old Town kind of striking back. We end on kind of like the kind of a triumphant yet really violent moment. So it does feel like kind of like an ending, and then we have kind of our other more, I would argue, more satisfying endings.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Speaking of which,
All right, so I feel like we've already kind of covered a lot of Yellow Bastard Part 2. So I mean, obviously, the big thing to go over here is first of all, I love the tension. I love the tension. Like there is a lot to go over. Like
okay,
I
well the
love
first, yeah, go on.
well, I love the whole the passage of time, how we see like one of the most striking shots I think, and it's obviously right out of the comics, is just just seeing Hardigan in his cell. You know how the
Mm-hmm.
bars kind of like are superimposed over him.
The infinite bars,
Right,
because they're going
right,
all the way to
yeah.
the ceiling. Whether they actually go to the ceiling or not, it's it's aesthetic. You don't know.
Hmm. But just the passage of time, and then when he gets out, Dragon, I think one of the most effective moments of tension in the whole movie is when he goes to the bar and it's just like, please don't notice me.
Mm,
Please don't notice me.
yeah,
And yeah, and it like obviously her noticing him like kind of kicks off everything, but like it's just like, oh, if she would have just like not noticed him, the whole thing probably wouldn't have gone down the way it did.
yeah. So you're right. There's so much tension throughout it. I love the introduction to part two. I love Powers Booth, the wonderful, dearly missed Powers Booth, as the other Rourke here, Senator York. And just this is such a brilliant revenge on an honest cop that I've ever seen. The idea that he will, again, the honesty will destroy him, being the idea that basically, it will destroy him for not lying.
Right.
It's just the idea that I'm going to fix your bum heart. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to make sure you live for a long time. And basically, you tell anyone they're dead. It's just, oh my god, and it's such a great, it's kind of like amount of it's a kind of account of I keep wanting to say Monte Cristo. Was it Amontillado? What's it?
Monte Cristo.
It is Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Monte Cristo kind of revenge plot, and I just really, it's so twisted.
Oh yeah, totally.
But again, so Powers Booth just like basically explaining the power structure. I could just gun you down right here, and I have so many people bought off in this hospital, it won't matter. But I'm going to keep you alive and just keep you, like, again, he's punishing him for being honest and for not committing the sin, despite he will not admit his own son is a degenerate monster. And he's mad at him for like stopping the bloodline, which is the other great thing too with the generations of Rourke, by the way, where in this story we end the bloodline there, where again we're not
going so because could you imagine how fucking worse it could be?
So I always love that, like, thematically, it's like, and I love that we kill Kevin. With mind you, chronologically, we kill him later, but the point being, Kevin, he's off the table. But even before we kill Junior, the fact that Junior has been essentially, he's been neutered, that's like the fact that his father would not let that stand because the Rourke name has to go on. He pumped him full of those chemicals that turned him into that yellow monstrosity.
Right.
In order to just to regrow his equipment.
Now let's talk about the yellow, because
I've
always read it as like, it's definitely like the chemicals, but like symbolically I've read it as just like this dude is so fucking evil that like I said, it almost like transcends the color scheme of the movie. It transcends reality almost, how fucking evil he is.
Yeah, I think honestly the way I kind of read it was sort of like the yellow. I want to say, no, I don't have no verification on this. I want to say the yellow kind of stems from, it's like a jaundice kind of a thing, where like a medical thing, where if you were, possibly if you had like a kidney deficiency, you might turn a little jaundice. Now, mind, this is not kidneys, I know, but it's the idea of like we've taken like the inkling of like a real world thing, but then we've kind of heightened it with like the idea of like what chemicals to actually regrow things that were lost. But you're right, symbolically though, it is like if color represents like passion or like aesthetics. Like, for think about it, we have red blood, we do. But also we do colors here and there, like green eyes, like definitive traits. For example,
Scars.
Scars. And I've gone over this many a time. I love, me, I love a good color theory. I'm obsessed with it in Daredevil. And of course, Daredevil does borrow a lot from Frank Miller.
Of course.
So with that in mind, I'm with you, Tiki. I don't think it's an accident that we've made this character all yellow, in which it's a defining trait. It's been an aesthetic choice up to this point, but this guy's defining trait is color. So in a sense, we've built to this point with color, is that it's been like little things of like, red is like lust and passion and love. The bed that Marv's in with Goldie, her hair is yellow, but again, it's gold, not yellow, because if we make it yellow, that might suggest the later guy.
Right. But I love how the yellow bastard is like, he is like the most concrete. Like if you were to look up mustard yellow on a color scale, that's what you get basically.
Yeah. I love too that what's great about the yellow as well is the fact that so Goldie, it's like ethereal. One of the great things of the color, by the way, is when we had Goldie shift to Wendy, where she walked through the cell through Marv's POV, and she went from gold to then turned to like the white. But sorry, what I'm getting at is like yellow. You have to give him describe the smell of Junior, and the fact that oh man, his blood smells worse than he does. The idea that chemical just makes him stink the way he does. It's Rodriguez getting ready for smell-o-vision, but it's kind of the smell-o-vision kind of there, where it's like, if you have to assign a smell,
can you imagine this movie in smell-o-vision?
Oh god, that's the thing, But think about it though, because everything would smell like cigarettes.
Right. Yeah, basically, it just smelled like a Vegas casino.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Is the cell that this guy reeks the way he does, and would just be as this guy be as disgusting as you can imagine. We've made him like a sickly yellow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I don't think you're far off. I don't know if it's like quite meant
No,
to be
I
literal.
think
But,
it's very much a mix. Like there definitely is a plot reason for him being
yeah,
yellow. I think symbolically it also
yeah,
fits.
yeah. So yeah,
As we already established, there's a lot of great bookends going on. It's a bookend within the movie. There's a lot of great kind of like, it's poetry, it rhymes, kind of lines coming back. Just all around, this segment is really strong. I mean, I agree with you that I think the first half is maybe a little stronger. It leaves a stronger impression, but I don't know. I think one of these is. I think both of them are just they work so well together, specifically because of the rhyming dialogue. And yes, Little Blue, I believe Spy Kids 4
yeah.
did Smell-O-Vision. Like, yeah, they actually did do Smell-O-Vision.
Yep. Spy Kids 4 and let's see, Rugrats Meet the Wild Thornberries.
Now, that's the classic example, man.
Yeah.
That's the example I actually have nostalgia for.
Oh yeah. So also I love the palpable tension is just great, and also the paranoia. Like when he stops her seat, so she keeps writing him coded letters as Cordelia, and without leaving. So basically, that is like what's getting him through prison. Because again, like you got to remember, the really great defining trait with the passage of time is that Hargan is like being beaten and tortured like daily for years into admitting that he committed the crime, and he won't do it. He won't give in. It's the honesty at play here. And the only thing getting him through is like he's getting letters from Nancy, which is like making her like again, this the really cementing the beautiful relationship. It's a really pure relationship between these two characters. And again, just they can't break him, so they trick him with the finger, which is so devious. The fact that they've just tricked him into thinking, "Oh God, we've cut off the finger of a 19-year-old girl."
Right.
He's like, "Oh no!" So he confesses, which that's the heartbreaking
for sure.
I was so heartbroken when he confesses, and the extended cut makes it even sadder. But it's the idea; it's such a brutal, it's the fact that he had to admit to it to get out, and he has to get a ride back from his dirty partner.
Yeah, that definitely stings. Water under the bridge, Hardigan.
But again, just Bruce Willis, he's acting the heck out of this. Like he has no malice for his wife, having like having started a family and kids and everything. Like he's, it's water under the bridge. But again, the inner monologue is so on point, and I love how smart like Hargan, I love that he doesn't look at Nancy romantically when we have like the big temptation moment for him when they're in the motel, and they do share the kiss because there's a lot of tension there, and she kind of had to get it out of her system because she's got kind of like she's viewing the relationship as one thing again, the whole Electra complex daddy issues thing. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I thought it was really smart the way we handled it, where he says like there's wrong and then there's this. It just won't happen. Then because we've done this, we pull the rug out from under you when we go to the shower and you think, okay, she's gonna put a move on him, and then oh my God, it's Junior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dragon, check the private chat really quick. A little bit of a.
All right.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. So just really, really good strides for doing there. Like I said, I love that the Katie's bar is just this great central hub in which we kind of reunite them after so long. Fun fact: to get Junior, to get that yellow so and so, as as terrifying as he could be, when he re-enters our story and Hardigan puts the pieces together, that oh my God, that's him. Because initially he just doesn't know who, he's so unrecognizable. He doesn't know who it is. I love that Robert Rodriguez, he had Nick Stoll like leave him voice messages so he could basically like really sell the line of "You heard my voice, Hardigan," to get him to do that. Basically, he kept sending him messages, but Robert Rodriguez had so much going on with the production, he forgot that. Oh my God, he just keeps getting these random creepy voice messages, and he doesn't recognize the voice. So like, all this time, he keeps receiving these messages until he put two and two together. That, oh wait, he's calling me like I asked him to. which it's just kind of this great, just go, oh man, it's so palpable, like the fear and the dread of like that. It's, oh boy, it's Junior, he's back and he's got a grudge. He's got a grudge. But yeah, so it's tense, man. I like, and we have just this great, film noir, just sort of like, like death trap that we've put Hardigan in, where he's being hung as like Nancy is completely helpless, and it's really dependent on her doing the following the very explicit instructions that Hardigan gave her, which is, like, don't, whatever you do, don't scream, because he'll kill you if he hears you scream. Like, that's essentially, that's what that'll satiate his sick, perverted desires. And again, this that yellow so and so, he's so despicable. The idea that usually he victimizes children, but in this case he'll make an exception just for the tete-a-tete revenge of it all. It's, oh boy. Anyway, it's point being is, I love that, Hardigan, he gets out of the situation very cleverly. He doesn't MacGyver the situation. Kind of pulls a Batman escape of sorts. He breaks the glass of the window. He cuts himself free. It's really good stuff. Again, that we've recaptured the tension of Act One. We're repeating that story again. It's Frank Miller being able to use the repetition that will kind of be his undoing years later. But this is like it firing on all cylinders. That he's even like. Even the stories leading up to this, he's never had an occasion that would literally, like, very poetically pay off the way that it does. So, we get to the amazing full circle, thing of like him killing, the yellow son of a gun, where he gets there, his heart is kind of given out on him in the midst of the action. He gets the drop on him, he stabs him, and then he takes him out yet again. Never has the color yellow been so graphic.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Yes,
yeah, it is very visceral.
Yep, I mean, literally, just you see what he rips off. You kind of see. I love that you don't see everything. You just kind of see he rips off some meat. It's just yellow meat, and it's just this. I gotta be honest. There's on the Blu-ray of Sin City, they have like the audience screening, where basically it's the movie, but you get to hear the audience reactions.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
The audience, they eat it up, when he does that. And I still watching it. I just love this little moment. Nancy smiles like after that happens, and it's so twisted, yet it's really nice. That
I mean,
this guy.
did you touch when I was gone? Did you touch on Nancy, like kind of like having her, the attraction she has towards Hardigan, which. The one thing about that is that I kind of wish that they didn't show Hardigan like buying into it a little bit for a moment. I guess that's like Hardigan's one moment of weakness, but yeah,
Well,
I mean, Nancy has a lot of psychological, like, there's a lot to break down with her psychologically that's really interesting, including what you just mentioned.
Yeah, well, with the romantic moment there, I love that it was like we did it because it just felt kind of natural that it would happen. It would be an awkward moment, but it kind of would be a moment that has to happen. I think we handled it in the best way we could. Where he's been in prison for 8 years, she loves him. It's the Electra complex thing. They share one kiss, but then he stops it. And it doesn't continue beyond that very clearly. It's like one moment. Plus, given that we're going to kill him off, you want to give him at least one win, and we show that to the end he was still the good man that she fell in love with. And I think what really sells it is that the way Bruce Willis responds to her, where she says, I love you, says, I love you too with all my heart. It's just really kind of sad and beautiful, just the idea that he does love her in all the ways that count, and it's also kind of the with all my heart being the man has a damaged heart, and that's also kind of his other undoing here. Even if, Rourke says he fixed the heart. It's 8 years, and I guess honestly, I think it's less. I think Rourke did fix his heart, but it's just all the stress and the being shot and just everything that he's gone through.
Well, I mean, he's putting his body through a lot. Come on.
Plus, man. I mean, it's like daily beatings, like through 8 years. I mean, I think that might also, even if he did, like, the idea he would just keep him alive, and probably just alive enough, maybe. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, so our poetic thing here, where he tells like the one lie that he tells to Nancy, and he feels bad about it. Where the honest man does lie at the end, at the very end, where he tells her, oh yeah, I'm going to bring down the Rourke and everyone to send her off with peace of mind, knowing full well that there's no changing anything. I can't stop the roar because I might as well punch out God.
Right, right,
And
right.
he basically takes himself out so Nancy will be safe. So again, it's another heroic death that is actually definitive for him. So it again is really beautiful and poetic. It's just the only more. And again, think about this chronologically. This is supposed to happen first. So with his death, everything else sinful happens in the movie. All the other like really bent and crooked, and all the Kevin stuff with Marv, like all this gives way to happen in kind of a symbolic sense. So him dying, it's like the one good man dies, and the moral complication like bleeds into the rest of the world
Uh-huh.
because we couldn't let this poor guy get a win.
Yeah,
Which again is
totally.
kind of like the sad realities of life. Sometimes the good guy's not always going to win. And then we end on kind of our full circle again. I love that. Had we ended here, it would have been poetic. It would have been like, man, that is a really solid. That's a sad but solid ending. We do want to end on like people getting a little bit of a cheer, like, hey, we brought back the salesman, and Becky's going to get it in the end. In just the way of like Sin City, it all comes around. The bill comes due.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very satisfying ending and full circle moment for sure. And I mean, I don't know. Again, like, do you agree with me that about the Russian doll? Kind of like we have the customer is always right is kind of like the outer layer, and then of the bookends, and then that yellow bastard parts 1 and 2 is like the inner layer of the bookends, and then everything else is kind of like in the center of that. Like, I think it's a really interesting framework.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's a very good ending for sure, and I love the walk down the right back alley in Sin City and you can find anything is the final line.
Yeah.
Very fitting, very iconic. All
Yep.
right. So, final thoughts on your end?
Final thoughts. This is a classic, man. It's just
Absolutely.
I'm not going to say it's like I'm sure like there's a better noir movie in the tomes of film history, but I mean in terms of like this is a rarity. This is a different animal here. This is like again the not only is it a great noir movie, but again it's a phenomenal comic book adaptation and quite possibly the most faithful comic adaptation ever made. Quite
Mhm.
possibly in terms of like again going out of your way to make
If Snyder
everything.
just kept the squid intact, Watchmen probably would have had a claim to make for that.
At the
But
very least, there would have been an
really,
argument to made. And look, I want to be clear again. Tiki and I were of the opinion we like the switch of the squid in that context,
I
right?
think from a story point of view, I think it works. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's the thing. Like, I'll go to bat for like however, I'm going to go back for the ultimate cut of watching that has everything in there. But a lot of people say, why would I watch a 4-hour movie? you know. But regardless, I still this again. There's looking back on it, this thing is still it's a work of art. Again, it's like we literally had the comic writer and artist like directing the movie as you should. Never will that ever happen again. I promise you. This is a rarity. This is like lightning in a bottle. It is. I mean, it's darn near flawless. I would say it knows what it is. It's one of the best Robert Rodriguez movies. I'm sure people might say like, oh, what about this or that? But I don't know. It's just there's something really special and really unique and something that he's never quite.
This gotta be the best Robert Rodriguez movie. It's
That's
gotta
what
be.
I'm saying. Like I haven't seen like a lot of his other stuff aside from obviously I've seen the Spy Kids movies. I've seen this, but I haven't seen like Once Upon a Time in Mexico. I don't know how. I don't. Dust Till Dawn. I don't.
To be fair, I have not seen those either. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know how his other stuff is. I mean, it was a claim to fame for him for sure. So I have to assume that they're good. But the point being, in my book, this is like at the very least in Rodriguez often is kind of mocked and just kind of like he's looked at he's put in a box of like, oh, the Spy Kids guy, the guy who uses all the green screen or this. But this is like all those the guy's a filmmaker through and through, and this demonstrates what he can do and how he kind of like made a stab at changing the medium in a big way. He really said, this is what we could be doing. And again, whether or not we've ever replicated this did inspire a lot of people like, what can we do to be more faithful to the comic? And this is what it would look like. The only difference is that it wasn't a superhero comic. That's like, had we done that, I mean, that's, who knows where we would be, in terms of like, we probably would have had the X-Men in costume a lot earlier,
Well, yeah, among a lot of other things.
That's what
you kind of did, to a certain extent, did get like at least as far as like the designs go, pretty comic accurate.
That's what I'm saying is the fact that this film went a long way. It's the fact that it was so specialized in such a specific genre of comic. It did right by the comic medium, but again, it wasn't doing like all the comics, or at least the most prevalent of comics. So in that sense, this is a really great one shot kind of deal that is still flawless. Again, it had people woke up and say, "Oh, look at all the other stuff. If we can treat the superhero medium like this offshoot of a comic, or like stuff like Road to Perdition, for example, also a comic adaptation."
Kind of
Again,
paved the way for the Dark Knight, even.
that's what I'm saying. If we, this thing again, it was kind of in the grand scheme, it was kind of underrated. I think it was still lauded and still very much well loved. But again, this thing could have made bigger ripples in the industry had people really kind of put two and two together. That, oh my God, why can't we do this with more things?
Right.
But
sure.
Still, it is a testament to some of the best that Frank Miller's done. At the very least, Frank Miller is opus that is not based on a prominent superhero character. This is like, again, this is a love letter of Frank Miller and of Frank Miller's love letter to the black and white detective movie, which you and I are also big fans of. So it's great to see. It'll be a while before we ever see if Ray Gunn does in fact do the Brad Bird detective movie right. We'll see. But if it never does, this is the closest we're ever going to get to it.
Oh, that fabled Brad Bird black and white detective Pixar movie.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're getting Ray Gunn. That's probably not going to be in black and white, but it is a detective movie and is a noir detective movie in animation that Brad Bird is directing. So that might be the closest we're going to get to it. But worst case, that ever happened.
Or is it Lasseter's company?
Well, that's Skydance, yeah.
Well, that right there should tell you something.
Well, still.
All right. Anyways, yeah, I honestly think one of the reasons why this movie isn't as iconic as you would think it would be, because like I already established, like it's fair to say this movie fucking it holds up remarkably well. I think it holds up better than a lot. Like as much love as I have for Peter Jackson's King Kong, and as you know, I have a lot of love for that movie. I definitely think this holds up a lot more. Like there's elements of King Kong that are wonderful that still hold up, like the production design, but from a pure like computer and like there's a lot in Peter Jackson's King Kong besides Kong himself that does not hold up on the visual effects end. This is like, I mean, it's obviously a movie that's wall-to-wall visual effects, but as we keep saying, it's so stylized, it's so immersive, and you just between this and Speed Racer, you just have to wonder like what Hollywood would be like if we embrace that type of visual storytelling more. And I just think like with Frank Miller going off the rails like pretty much immediately after this movie came out, I think it kind of like, and also stuff like The Spirit, and then also the sequel being underwhelming, like I don't think time has done this movie favors just as far as like the legacy surrounding the movie, like with Frank Miller and the kind of like lazy offshoots that have come off of it. But I still think the movie itself is rock solid. And as I kind of said in my opening statement, I think if there's any dated elements of the movie, it's just kind of like by nature of it being, a hard-boiled noir movie. Like, of course, there's going to be some elements of it that are a little bit unsavory. That's the point. That's the whole genre. So, yeah, I think it holds up remarkably well. I think visually there's really not anything in this movie that doesn't look just fantastic, which for a 20-year-old movie is really saying a lot. I really don't think you can. I mean, Dragon, there's movies that are 5 years old, right? That you look at now and you're just like, oh my God, like that. Like The Lion King 2019, I think is a good example of that. When that movie first came out, at the very least, people could point to it as like a cool like tech demo, which is all that movie was ever good for. But nowadays, it's like you look at it and there's a lot wrong with the visual language of that movie. It's muddy. It's like, obviously, the character designs suck. Like, there is nothing in this movie that doesn't just sing on a visual
I mean, Marv's bandages, they pop so much, like all the little details. They just,
So yeah, just a very, I mean, it was quite a treat. Like I said, I got pretty hyper fixated on this movie when it came out. So I really didn't need the rewatch, but it was a treat to rewatch it anyways, because it was still just to reaffirm how good the movie holds up visually. So yeah, all right. Glad we finally got that out of the way, folks. Believe me, we've been kind of stressing on the timing of this for a while now. Thanks to Eli of Little Blue Productions for providing some commentary, as well as Teddy at the beginning. And we will see you next time, folks. Have a good night. See you later. I don't know about you, but I'm having a ball.
It'll be a gas.